the sound of the bell. Mind calm, body at ease, breathing quiet, sentiment benevolent. Dharma friends sitting still in vital silence, wanting nothing, we practice eco-Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of non-violent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Om Amoga Bhairakana Mahamudra Mani Padma Chavala Pragataya.
Take a moment to care for your mats and cushions, and then stand for chanting of the 3 refuges. Feeling our feet connect with the earth, bringing our hands palm to palm in a gesture of sincere heart, hapchang. And in keeping with our tradition, we will take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the 3 jewels, first in Sino-Korean, and then a second time in English. So even if you do not know the words, just throw your voice in with the sound. I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Buddha.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
And realize the great way.
And realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
And uncover oceans of wisdom.
And uncover oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many.
And transform this world into Buddha land unimpeded.
And transform this world into Buddha land unimpeded.
Please return now for another shorter period of meditation. Taking a moment to check in with our posture. It can be helpful to lean forward on the knuckles, eyes up at the ceiling, stretching and strengthening the back. And then arms, palms facing, lifted overhead, palms turning out, and slowly coming down, feeling the shoulder blades coming down the back as well. Our fingers find the meditation mudra posture, left fingers on top of right, thumbs lightly touching. The belly is soft and relaxed. A slight lift to the breastbone. A slight tuck to the chin. The gaze is soft, staring down the bridge of the nose to a spot in front of you about 45 degrees. And as you listen to the sound of the bell, please go to your meditation practice, which may be counting the out breath, working with a Wadu question, or something else. Please join me in some simple mindfulness exercises. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Peppa.
My name is Jagwa Kelly Davenport. I'm one of the teachers here at the Arbor Zen Temple. And it's nice to see all of you this morning. Hi. Can everybody hear me okay? Can you hear me? You want to come and sit closer? Okay, well, good. There's one there and one there, so this should be okay. There you go. So About 6 or 7 weeks ago, I was taking care of my neighbor's dog. They were traveling, and so the dog came to stay with us for a week. And we had just gotten done playing at the park near our house. It's actually an elementary school, throwing the Frisbee. And my husband and I were taking the dog back to the car. Her name is Jo. And she likes to sit on the passenger's lap whenever she rides in the car. She refuses to be in the back seat. So she was trying to get on my husband's lap, and she only weighs about 20 pounds or so. And she was kind of struggling to jump up into the Subaru on the passenger side. So I bent forward to kind of give her a boost, and then my back just went. And this has happened to me a few times before over the last 5 years or so. I seem to have some kind of muscle imbalance on the right side where just the right angle, my sacrum locks up. And I recently started going to lift weights with a coach at a gym because I thought, well, I'm really going to get on top of this back issue. I'm going to figure it out, and then it won't happen again. And I had been doing quite well for about the last 6 or 8 months. I hadn't had this happen to me until picking up the dog. And I continued going to the gym, and I thought, well, I just need to stretch it out. I just need to work through it, and it will get better. And of course, I just made it worse. And the woman that teaches me weightlifting diagnosed me with a hinge intolerance, which I thought was a very polite way of saying, you've been a little stubborn. So I couldn't do any prostrations. I couldn't bow. It's mostly better now, but still a little iffy some days. And so I've been kind of working with this question of, if I can't make a physical bow, and I'm still doing my practice, because normally we would do prostrations or at least 3 bows before we sit down for morning meditation. And so it's sort of this question of, well, what is happening internally, physically and mentally when you're bowing, when you can't bend forward? So that's been a little bit of a question in the back of my mind. But I think that I tell you this story more so because it reflects kind of the 2 biggest themes for me over the last decade of doing this practice, and that have been maybe the most integral to my experience of developing spirituality. And that is becoming humbled and learning how to accompany difficulty. And I finally got smart, and I took some time off from the weightlifting. I've been doing a little bit more kind of physical therapy things that seems to be helping. And it's feeling mostly better. But I wanted to talk today a little bit about those 2 themes of humility and accompanying difficulty. I hear this word a lot over the last year or so, as we have all been kind of in whatever phase of this pandemic that we're currently in, and that is resilience. I work in a business setting, and so there's a lot of talk about how do we make our business resilient. There's all these uncertainties. It's even being used to sell products. This thing will help make you more resilient. So I've been in meetings with hearing this word, and it's been on my mind too, because when I realize how much time has passed over the last 2.5 years of this collective experience, which has been different for each person living through this pandemic, I do feel somehow more resilient. And so I started reflecting on, well, what does that word really mean? And how is it that I feel that way? I think in the past, I would have associated resilience with something more like grit. Like if I just make myself do the thing, if I just put my head down and one foot in front of the other, I would get through this difficult situation and then it will be over. And I do think that some notion of fortitude is tied up in the question of resilience. But I think for myself, the longer that I live and figure out how to work with difficulties in my life, I think it's actually more about getting softer and not getting harder. And maybe especially when you're faced with a situation that you have no idea how to meet it. There's this sort of not knowing that invites, rather than sort of the getting tougher or getting grittier, maybe this opening to something, the softening to something. Let me see what this could actually be. Let me see what this situation is really calling for. I think my notion before was much more about surviving aversion. I really wish this thing wasn't happening. Let me just deal with it and then it will be over. But in that frame of mind, it's really difficult to see what that situation actually is showing you. So I think the place where we actually begin to develop a little bit of resilience is right here on the mat and cushion. In our meditation practice, we are constantly met with running thoughts, maybe difficult physical sensations, memories of things that have happened in the past, second guessing ourselves, maybe fantasizing about something that's going to happen in the future. And every one of those situations is this opportunity to get softer and look, what is this showing me? How do I come back to my practice? And if it's a challenging sensation, how do I actually accompany this sensation without judgment and with a sense of curiosity? And I love to look up the histories of words. So I looked up resilience, and it comes from a Latin root, as do many of our English words, that means to come back into form, to come back into shape, sort of a bouncing back notion. And I thought, okay, that sounds right, because we have this famous saying that you may have heard around this temple from our Korean tradition, 8 times down, 9 times up. Maybe that's our little encapsulated teaching of resilience that you'll hear shared in our tradition. And I think that that evokes that spirit of coming back into form, coming back into shape. How do I come back? And so I think our meditation practice is a lot about learning for ourselves, what does it feel like to come back? I want to say too that I think the practice of learning to be with difficulty is not an intellectual exercise. It would be really easy to give some kind of basic formula or instruction about if you do steps 1 through 5, then you'll know how to do it. But at least in my experience, it's much more of a physical going through. Anytime that I've had a difficulty on the cushion out in the world, I really notice how much it's in my body. My heart rate goes up. Sometimes I get tension in my chest or in my stomach. I can feel my cheeks getting warm. And it's like this, physical response to whatever is so challenging. And again, it would be easy, like with the back pain, to just go, I'm just going to pull through this. But the other beautiful thing about sitting on the cushion is that if you sit there long enough with whatever is going on, you're going to learn for yourself one of those core teachings of our tradition, which is all of things are always changing. So this thing that feels like it's never going to be any different is subtly changing even as you begin to watch it. Even the back pain, subtly changing from day to day and minute to minute, if you're watching it. So one of the teachings in our 6 Right Livelihood Guidelines, which are sort of the contemporary guidelines for daily living that were developed by some of our Sangha members in this community, I think actually in Chicago, is the last one, accept constant change. So when we think about impermanence, in some ways, accepting constant change is the one thing that we have to rely on. And so recently I had an experience with being asked to trust in change, trust in the things that are always changing in life for myself. And I can tell a little bit of sort of the background for this story. I used to live in the Pacific Northwest, which is where I met my husband. And there's a beautiful place in Central Oregon that we've been visiting for over a dozen years. There's natural geothermal regions in Oregon, and so there's hot water that's bubbling up out of the earth. And for about the last 40 years in this particular place, there has been a group of people who have basically an intentional community. So not a spiritual one per se, but they run their own business as a worker-owned cooperative, and they host guests to come in and go in these hot springs. So they had built this amazing infrastructure completely off the grid. They had divert a little bit of water from the river on the property to turn a turbine that was built in the 1800s. And then they used that to generate enough power to have guest cabins. And there's an old lodge from the 1930s that they had restored. And then the hot water is piped all around underneath the earth into radiators to create natural geothermal heat. So it's this really kind of amazing feat of this community had built together over the last 40 years. And even going back much further than that, for probably the last couple of thousand years, this land has been a sacred place for the indigenous people of the inland Northwest. You can imagine, particularly in the winter, how miraculous it would have been to come across this valley where there's warm water and game can come even in the winter. And so hunting ground and sort of sacred trading ground for this place. It's called Breitenbush is that's the American name. And so we've been going there for a dozen years. And really just one of the places that in my life has been so renewing, and the sort of place where if I'm having a bad day or a bad night and I can't fall asleep, I can think about being up under the big cedar trees at Breitenbush. And then in 2 years ago, in September 2020, there was a terrible wildfire, the Lion's Head fire. And then I can't remember, there was a second fire and they converged in this area. It's actually called Detroit, Oregon, and around the Breitenbush River. And this was the first fall, I guess, of the pandemic. So yeah, September 2020. And I had been kind of following along very closely online to see if there was any news, because they had evacuated the whole area, including the town where people lived lower down on the mountain. And then the people who had just had summer homes and then this guest community were all evacuated because of the fire. And there was a lot of rumors swirling around, did the place entirely burn? What happened? And what happened was that one man stayed behind and then was joined by 3 volunteer firefighters. And they fought the fire for a week, almost on no sleep. And were able to save many of the buildings, but about half of them burned, including most of the quarters of the people that lived there, the community that ran it, all of the guest cabins, about 40 structures, and a couple of other large buildings on the property, as well as, of course, many trees, many animals. And so it was incredibly devastating for me, because this was that special place, almost like a fantasy place in my mind that I would go to and feel safe. And I remember after the first several months of the pandemic and the isolation, then this was another thing that happened. My special place that in my mind I could go to was completely changed. And so we didn't, many people could not go. There was a long rebuilding effort to clear fallen trees on the highway, tear down the old structures, mill new lumber from fallen trees, and begin rebuilding. And so that's what they've been doing for the last 2 years. They decided, of the small group of people that wishes to come back and restart this community, we're going to try again. And so we did not have the opportunity to go there for the last couple of years until this past October. And so as this trip approached, I was feeling excited and also kind of scared to see what it was going to be like, because I was so attached to this beautiful forest, and I knew that it was going to be very different. Many trees had been lost. And so as you reach Detroit, you're going kind of on a 2-lane highway through Central Oregon, just little towns along the way. It looked pretty much like I remembered. And then as we approached Detroit Lake, which is a huge reservoir for drinking water, and the Brighton Bush River empties into Detroit Lake, and there's a dam that they control. You could look on one side and it would be normal forest. You could look on another hillside and it would be completely bare, or just standing dead black, charcoal trees, basically. And I was realizing I had never actually been in land like that had burned. And of course, fires are usually quite a normal process of renewing the forest. But as the trees and the land have gotten much more dry because of climate change, this particular one was very devastating. And so trees that were quite old, who would normally have survived that kind of fire, many of them were also damaged. So you go up this little Forest Service road to the top of the mountain where the community is. And I almost didn't recognize it because there was so much more sky, because the trees had all been cut down on either side. It almost was like being in a meadow at the top of a hill instead of in a forest. But I was really happy to see that there were still many large trees on the land, just fewer than there were before. And I was so surprised to see that many of the trees where I only looked at the base, my eye level, were black. But if you looked, because these are probably 200 feet tall pine trees of different kinds, if you looked all the way up at the top, they still had green branches and needles at the top. So the fire had scorched the base of the trees, but many of them were actually still alive, which I was shocked by. So we settled in and we stayed in a yurt because, of course, many of the structures burned, so they've put up big tents. And as we were coming back from the hot springs, it was pitch black. And of course, there's no light pollution up in the mountains. So you could look up and see the entire constellations. I had never seen it so bright. When they say that stars can twinkle, and you think, oh yeah, we have a nursery rhyme about that, but you've never actually seen a star twinkling. When it's that clear and there's no other light, you can actually see where that comes from. Oh, wow, that's real. And so I was so surprised how beautiful this place was, but in a very different way. And I think if I had not been open to trusting that this experience would be different, it would be changed, it would bring up grief, but there would still be something to be with, to learn from, to experience, and to trust. And so I wanted to share that story because I think when I look forward in my life, I'm 41, and I know that there's going to be a lot of difficult changes that I will probably live through, changes ecologically and socially. And rather than making the choice each time that I'm confronted with some challenge to go towards what feels safe, which for me usually is avoiding, that if I make that choice, the longer I live, my world is just going to get smaller and smaller, which I don't want. And so I think for me, this experience brings up that lesson of really turning towards and trusting this change, this life. What is it that will surprise me? In this case, it was the stars. There was fewer trees, but you could see all the stars. And I was amazed by that. I could not have guessed that that would be my experience until I went up there and saw it for myself. So, yeah, and I guess, maybe I would just offer too that as we head into the season of being with family around the holidays, that can bring up a lot of really challenging situations for us. I always laugh to myself remembering the famous quote from Ram Dass, who says, if you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family. And so I guess I offer this story because you may have some version, whether it's with family relationships and those deep kind of karmic entanglements that you feel there. Maybe it's with something else. To suspend judgment and to trust the situation. Trust that you have the capacity to see and respond what the situation needs, rather than playing small and saying, I'm just going to avoid that. And I think just to reiterate that it doesn't need to be some kind of big magical story, like going up and seeing this burned forest or something like that. I think something very simple, like having your daily meditation practice, is the place where you can experience this for yourself and to begin to develop that sort of 8 times down, 9 times up spirit for yourself. What does that really feel like? And how do you notice that then being a new muscle in your daily life? Oh, here's a new option for me. I have more capacity. I have more resilience. So I wanted to end with just a brief reading from this book because there's a concept that I think is similar to what I've been talking about that we learned about when some of us had the opportunity in June to visit Korea, where our lineage comes from. And there was a very famous female Zen master, Master Dehang Sunam, who only died around 10 years ago and has written many, many books and had a very sort of direct and accessible style. And so there's a group of folks within her organization that are translating her works into English. And so this was a book that we were given that is a translation of the 1,000 Hands and Eyes sutra chant that is done in Korean monasteries every day. And this is a very kind of contemporary translation. And so Master Dehang's kind of sort of like the core spirit of what she would frequently teach is, you may have heard the term Buddha mind, the mind that's the mind of awakening that is accessible to all. She calls it the one mind or the foundation. And so you'll hear that term in this passage. My one mind is the root of all things. All things arise from it, so all things I completely entrust to it. This letting go fills my heart with light. Inherently, there is no path to find, nor obstacles to overcome. One mind is the foundation. So just as it is truth and fully present throughout my life. Knowing that the wisdom and enlightenment of all Buddhas is my one mind, I fully trust my one mind and follow its compassionate guidance. Believing in my one mind and following its profound truth, I will become free from all attachments and able to use the infinite ability within me. So we have a little time. If anyone would like to ask a question, make a comment, reflection. Here, I'll pass the microphone.
Oh.
Yes, I have it. I think,
Yes.
yes, it's just the toggle.
Can you hear me? I'm struck by the desire to keep things the same.
Mm.
And sometimes that's what we really want, right? Just like deer learn if they follow a certain path, they'll find food and they'll be safe. But then things happen, changes happen. You can form some opinion about yourself when you're a child.
Mm.
I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. I need this. But with time, things change. And so you can be like a deer and go down the same path all the time, even though it's hunting season. And if you're a smart deer, if you're really looking at what's happening around you, you're not going to do that. You're going to choose a different path so you can stay away from the hunters. If you can't make that change in your life, then you're an unfortunate deer. If you can't, as a grown-up, realize that things have changed from when you were a kid, you get locked into something that I know people who are locked into fear. I know people who are locked into criticism. They think everyone is criticizing them and they criticize everyone else from things that happened to them in their lives when they were young or when they were traumatized by something that they can't let go of. They can't let go of. Presumably, if you have a deer mind and you look at what's happening right now, you can adjust. And you might find it to be a more pleasant life doing that than staying locked into something that you thought you needed to stay secure. You need to keep thinking about what's happening around you every day in order to be secure and be happy.
I don't want to put it too close to them boxing everybody out. Firstly, I really resonated with today's talk, and I think to go back to the first part around resiliency, it's a word I've been thinking about for a while, even pre-pandemic. And so over the course of my life, I think many people have often said that I'm a resilient person for different reasons. And I've grown to not enjoy it because I don't want to be resilient anymore. I really would like to, there's part of my body even that just wants to rest. Like, I have enough resilience. Let's get to the other parts. And I think most recently where it came into play was I saw like many of the things that have sort of, I think, alleviated some of our stressors in life. I saw memes throughout the last few years. I think memes have become an MVP of the pandemic because it's comedy, right? Like beyond, they're not essential necessarily, but I think that they're comedy. There was a meme that said, I had resiliency hasn't made me stronger. It's just made me funnier. And I'm always grateful that resiliency somehow is bound up in my ability to find humor in things. And I'm grateful for this space because I moved to Ann Arbor at the end of August. I moved from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I was living in the neighborhood where the uprisings began and where George Floyd was murdered and lynched. And as someone who already had CPTSD and grew up as a kid in the military, what I saw and experienced in my neighborhood really impacted me and so many people. And to be able to have the space here to, and in Ann Arbor that I'm carving out, to really do that realignment that you spoke to around the definition of resiliency is incredibly important, and unfortunately it's an advantage. There's so many people who don't get that space to do that wiggle back into, and I actually don't think it's an into something, I think it's a forward movement, because you never get to be the person who you were again. And I really am glad to hear conversations around resiliency and what that can open up. And the reading at the end is really lovely. So thank you all for listening, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I'm in the process of making some changes in my life. I guess I'm trying to be my own forest fire in a way. This was the first Thanksgiving that I spent with my family where I was sober for in a long time. And what you said right at the start about aversion and feeling like you just have to sort of white knuckle through something and then it's done and then it's over. I feel like I'm still in that kind of mindset with maintaining sobriety around people that I find really challenging. But I guess I'm saying this out loud with the hope and the commitment to focusing my practice on getting away from that white knuckling and being able to find the twinkling stars. I'm not quite there yet, but maybe someday. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, something that everyone said reminded me of a teaching from a monk who lived here at the temple in the early part of the pandemic. You may have met him, Brother Faku. He was in the Thich Nhat Hanh order. Very tall guy, glasses, always in his robes. And this question that he shared with us, one of our training students reminded me of this at a meeting a couple of weeks ago. And it is, where is freedom in this moment? Where is freedom? That is his practice when he is challenged with habit energy coming up, how I always did things, this is what's comfortable, but it doesn't feel, it's like an ill-fitting jacket at that point. And you know there's something else, but you don't know what it is. Where is freedom? That's what his question was. And so I've been thinking about that for myself a lot lately too. So thank you for sharing. Okay, so before we do the 4 great vows, I think we have some announcements. Simone, would you like to do the announcements?
Great. I was just going to say, there's been times like in the dark night when I'm like 8 times down, 9 times up. That's what Haji said. That's what this means. I'm like on 3 or 4, but yeah. Oh, and I also wanted to say that there's been times when I go camping, I set my alarm for 3 a.m. so I can see the moon. And so far, I've never been able to see it, but I need to find a place that doesn't have a tree canopy above me. So yeah, I do have some announcements. Okay, so by the way, I know I meet all you guys all the time, but I'm Simone, if you don't know my name. And it's good to see you here. This coming weekend, we've got a overnight meditation class. It's kind of like the 6 weeks class, but it's overnight from Friday at 7 to noon on Sunday. It's almost like, Saturday, thank you. It's almost like a regular meditation retreat. You stay overnight, eat, and learn lots of basic knowledge about meditation and some Zen, and that would be nice to do. Also on Saturdays, we always got work practice, we call it, 3 to 5, where we're either outdoors or indoors, doing various things for the temple. It's a great way to give back. We've got also Saturday at 3, a BIPOC meditation group that's here or online. So if you'd like to come to that, it's right here. We've got yoga classes on Tuesday evenings from 6:30 to 8. David Black is a wonderful instructor here in this room. Yeah, we have a family service coming up on the 11th, which is 2 weekends from now. So we'll all be here. We'll just find a way to have probably like a small joint service, and then we'll go on. So as far as things today go, I know we have recovery Dharma. Mike's here, Savan's here.
We will be meeting in the library of the Yellow House next door. Today it truly will be the Len and Mike show.
And Len, yeah. Hey. We also have sometimes on Sundays, work practice afterward. Are we going to have that today, or yes? Okay, so Haji will be leading that if you're interested.
Here's what it is. It will be for about 15 minutes. And yesterday I picked some things from the garden. I have a lot of seeds that we will harvest for planting next year. Zinnia, cosmos, and fennel. And so we'll be in the dining room of the Sangha house, which is across the yard. And so if you're interested when we're finished, turn up. It will just be 15 minutes, unless you really get addicted to the I'd also just like to welcome some of our members that we haven't seen for a while. Pacho is here, right over here, and he is, are you still living in Texas, Pacho?
Austin, yes.
Yeah. So it's so nice that you come in, when you come back, that you come over to the temple. And it's good to see you back too, Saban. I know you've been visiting family.
Finally back from New Hampshire, so it's good to be there.
Back to the seeds, so just go over to the Sangha Hall porch and come right in if you're interested.
Sounds nice. Also after the service, a small way to give back to the temple. We have these meditation mats and cushions that are outside this carpet area here, like the 2 back there, one over here. If you can bring your mats up to either that corner or this corner, and your cushions up front. That'd be much appreciated. Also, thank you to everyone that's donated for this year's our donation season. Fall fundraiser. Thank you. And people have given. There's a way you can see on the wall outside here that you've made your contribution, and also there are some cards and envelopes that you can take with you if you'd like to. So I guess that's about everything, unless anyone else has anything that they'd like to say.
I thought of one more thing. Yeah, I see that my captain is back, and he was a little unwell and not been able to be with us the last couple of weeks. So I'm glad that you made it this morning, Mike.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Two weeks ago, I got my COVID booster, and I was drowsy for the whole weekend. And then last weekend, I had to, I was invited to make a presentation at St. Mary's Catholic Campus Church.
Okay, well, happy Sunday, everyone. And I think we'll do the 4 great vows.
So please repeat after me. All beings, one body.
All beings, one body.
I vow to liberate.
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root.
Blind passions, one root.
I vow to terminate.
I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates, one mind.
Dharma gates, one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.
So we'll stand and do 3 formal vows together. And then, as Simone said, if you have a mat and cushion that is not touching the carpet, we would appreciate your help in putting it away.